ensuring quality in your online courses. And this is an introduction to quality matters. And so we'll really talk a lot about what it means to be a quality matters school and what it means to your online courses and helping it ensure quality. I am your presenter for this afternoon. My name is Tracy Miller, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Faculty Development Instructional Design Center. I've been sort of checking you in as you've come into the room, but potentially when there's a lot of people coming in at the same time, we can use this check-in feature. But again, I think you are all checked in, all of you that need to be checked in. I can quickly just check my attendance again to make sure I've got everybody. Looks like I do. So let's get things started here. When you're discussing online courses, who does quality matter to? And you can add that into that text chat area. Give me some ideas of who you think quality matters to. Good answer, Karen. Everyone. Students for sure. Besides everyone and students, can anyone else think of some people that it might matter to? Program directors for sure. Yeah, each course that's part of a program, really, it says something about the program if those individual courses are quality. I like that answer. Well, so many of you have picked the answers that we kind of picked out already. And students, faculty, administrators. I got some weird wrapping when I uploaded my PowerPoint in here, but I think we can read it. The university in general, it's very important to our reputation here at Northern that our courses are recognized as quality. Accrediting agencies, this is getting more and more important to all of us. The accrediting agencies are recognizing what it means to have a quality course, and they are making some stronger requirements in that kind of arena. There's quite a few bad actors out there that are sort of just selling these online degrees or not really meeting these quality standards. And so these agencies are starting to say, no, that's something that you need to address at your university. Down here at the bottom, I have legislators and taxpayers are kind of graded out, but that is, as a public institution, is also something that we need to address. You know, the legislators are looking for that level of quality, and all of the people, the great people of Illinois, want to know that as a public institution, we are really addressing the quality of our online courses. Sarat, you might have, I think evaluators is valid as far as someone that cares about the quality of our online courses, certainly in that way of an evaluation that's done with an accrediting body. As we talk about what quality matters actually addresses, think about that in terms of evaluation, and I will definitely bring that idea back around for you. So why do all these people, why does everyone want quality courses? And I think first and foremost, we're thinking about how it's going to improve the students' learning outcomes. How is this really going to improve the experience for our students and help them achieve everything that we want them to achieve? It could also improve student retention. If a student takes an online course and it's not a quality course, they may be less likely to take another course or even drop out of the program entirely because they're not getting a good experience. They're not getting what they need. So as much as we like to talk about online enrollments being up, we definitely want them to stay, not just enroll once. The quality of online courses can also prevent cheating or academic dishonesty. There are quite a few things that we can use, strategies that we can use that can prevent cheating if we kind of aspire to meet these quality standards that we're going to talk about this afternoon. A course, once a student gets into a course, in order to promote their interest in your content that you're delivering, that course design, that quality course design is really going to foster their interest in their motivation in the course. And then finally, quality online courses promote lifelong learners. Our online students are often your non-traditional students, your students that are in the workforce, coming back to higher education after several years, transitioning from one career to another. And so this idea of a quality online course really helps them to continue on as a lifelong learner. I smiled a little bit when I was talking about um, the non-traditional student, because at this point there's more non-traditional students than there are traditional students. And so I think that's a little bit of a flip there. Our traditional students should be the ones that are sort of those lifelong learners that are entering higher ed at many moments in their lifetime. So that's why I smirked a little bit. You might have heard the slight giggle in my voice. So how do we know what an online course is? Well, the first thing we need to think about is, what does it mean? How do we define quality in an online course? And Quality Matters has really taken some time to define what we mean by quality. Does that mean that it's the perfect course every time? Does it mean that certain aspects of the course have to be qualified some way? And we're going to talk about all of those definitions today. And you'll have a much clearer understanding of what quality matters means when they're defining quality. And they get really specific about it. And so I don't think we'll have as many questions at the end about that definition of a quality online course. How do we measure quality in our course? What is quality to you? How do you go about quantifying it? How do you know, how can you observe quality in an online course in order to be able to measure it? So we're going to talk a lot about that. And then evaluate. So getting back to the idea that evaluators would care about the quality of our courses. How do those evaluators go about doing that? And those are some of the things that we're going to cover today. So what is Quality Matters? I've thrown that name out a couple times. Sometimes I'll call it QM. This particular workshop is kind of a really condensed version of an all-day workshop that we do called Applying the Quality Matters Rubric Training. And so there's going to be a lot packed into this hour that we're going to spend together. And so it goes through quickly, but if it's something that you're interested in, we do a workshop on each one of the things that I'm going to cover today. And then again, we have that sort of bigger workshop that's an all-day workshop that unpacks all of this for you. But it always starts with, okay, what is this Quality Matters? So Quality Matters is a faculty-centered peer review process designed to certify the quality of online courses and the online components in an online course. It becomes a set of tools and standards for designing and reviewing online and blended courses. So whether it's a fully online course where you know, you never meet your students at the same time in the same place. But it also really is helpful for those blended courses. So any sort of course where a lot of your content delivery maybe is online, here at NIU on Blackboard, or any version in between. Maybe you're meeting with your students once a month, but the majority of the kind of course happens online. That all kind of rolls into that term of a blended course. And Quality Matters works for all of this. And Quality Matters has a underlying principle. And the underlying principles are what you see below. And they really look at quality, first of all, as a continuous process. So I mentioned earlier, you know, how do we define quality? Is that a perfect course? And Quality Matters really says it doesn't need to be perfect because there's always sort of that room for improvement. And as you're getting started with these things, you know, things really aren't going to be perfect. So it's all about how can your course just be better and better and improve over time. And so it's really important to Quality Matters that it's this continuous process. And just as sort of even a further intro to Quality Matters, what Quality Matters actually is a non-for-profit organization that started as a group of researchers that were researching all the literature, all the studies out there of what makes up a quality course. And it was actually part of a FIPSI grant, so a grant that the federal government came together and said, okay, we need to do something, so let's bring in a lot of different people from a lot of different organizations and come up with this set of standards. So that really gets at the next one, which is centered. All of the standards that we're going to talk about today are really centered on that research, and it continues to be centered on that research. This summer, the Quality Matters rubric came out with its 6th edition. And so that is, the 6th edition is really based off of the latest research on online course design and what are those best practices and what are those things that really help the students achieve at the highest level. Collegial, it's considered a very faculty-driven and supportive process. So it's not like a research review or a journal review where you're kind of a double-blind type of review where you don't really know who's looking at your work. This is really meant to be a partnership between the faculty, the instructional designer maybe that's building the course, and the people that are reviewing the course. So when we talk about any kind of recommendations that someone would have for you if they were to review your course, it really comes across, it's very important to Quality Matters, it comes across as a collegial process. And that really just ties into the collaborative approach too. Any review that's done on an online course to see if it's met the Quality Matters standards are conducted by peers. That's one of the first requirements of a reviewer, is that the reviewer is an online teacher. So they are somebody that has already gone through this and they have experience in it. They have experience in teaching. So it's not sort of these researchers out there that have never taught online. It's really important that it's the peers that are working together in this process. So there are many factors that go into an online course's quality. There's the design, so putting the course together, planning out the assessments, building your content into your course. The delivery is a little bit different. The delivery is to me, it's the teaching. It's the things that are happening when you're interacting with your students during the semester. And, that is also a very important part of the quality of your online course. The quality of your content. What is the quality, the sound quality of your presentations? Are those assessment questions that are in your tests and quizzes of high quality? Your course management system. So, here we use Blackboard. What's the quality of your course management system? And then you can see the last few, the university's infrastructure, your readiness to teach online, and your students' readiness to be online students. All of these things are very important to, again, the quality of that experience for your students. When we talk about quality matters, we're only talking about the course design. There are other ways to measure and define quality for some of these other areas, but particularly today, we're talking about the course design. So what is that forethought? What is that planning? What is that design that you're putting into your course? Now, our fall semester started at the beginning of this week. So it's always a bit of a balance when we do this workshop. We like to address it earlier. So if there's any kind of improvements or adjustments you're going to make to your course, you can do it early and kind of make those changes now based off of what you find out this afternoon. But really, at this point, we're sort of in the delivery, right? So hopefully we're still in that just in time where you can make some changes to your online course if you've already started. Of course, if you're planning on delivering an online course maybe in the spring, a future semester, then you may be starting your design at this point and just getting things ready, again, maybe to start it off in the spring. So this is a good time for if you're just doing an online course now, if you're planning on an online course in the near future, or if you even want to just tweak some of your courses that you've already done and now you're kind of making some adjustments to it. So what does quality matter not? It's always sort of interesting to have this definition of things, of not what things are, but what they are not. So first of all, it's not about individual instructors. It's about the course design. So getting back to what we were saying about evaluators before, if you're thinking about course evaluations or a faculty evaluation that your department chair or program director might do, it's not about you as an individual instructor. It's more about that course design. So just keep that in mind. And that ties right into the next piece. This is not about your ability to teach, and it's not something that becomes part of your faculty evaluation. Again, because it's about the course. If you think about it this way, when you design a course and you would have somebody review it, they would see a static version of the course. And so it would just be sort of what is already built into Blackboard. It's not a pass-fail. It's a diagnostic tool. And that gets back to some of those underlying principles of continuous and collaborative. When even if you do a self-review of your course using some of these ideas, it's just letting you know how you can make some improvements, how you can do things a little differently, again, based off of that research and maybe knowing new things now. But it's not a matter of your course passed or your course failed, and that was going to make some determination on the course. And it's not about creating that perfect course. What Quality Matters looks at is that a course is better than average, and it looks at it from sort of this 85% rule. So that B plus. So the course is not perfect, but it's definitely better than average. And I kind of like that they use the 85% because that still gets at the fact that you can always make improvements. For quite a while now, I've been designing courses and professional development opportunities in Blackboard, and I'm always designing them to the Quality Matters standards now, but I know there's still improvements that I can make to my course, especially as new research comes out, new strategies come out. So I'm okay with the 85%. The quality matters process is kind of demonstrated in this diagram here. And what it does is the process, that peer review process, starts with the course. And if it was an official Quality Matters review, they're actually looking for a mature course, something that's been taught online at least a couple times. And that's because we all realize that it's not going to be close to perfect the first time, especially if it was something that you didn't already know about the quality standards. And then there's tweaks that happen. After the first time you teach it, you realize that, oh, they didn't quite understand my directions for this particular assignment. Or I really hoped that this activity was going to work out this way and it didn't. And so, Quality Matters recognizes that. It recognizes that there's going to be these tweaks and refinements that happen. So they're looking again for that mature course. Next, a review would actually take place. And so that's sort of the next spoke on this wheel. And that would mean that your course, again, that static course that didn't have students in it, it wasn't live, would be handed over to a course reviewer, and they would look at your course and kind of look at it with all of those review standards that we're going to talk about. And then they're going to give you some feedback, and it's collegial, so they're going to give you helpful recommendations on some areas that you can make some improvements in. And if you've already met that sort of 85% level, then you're going to still get that great feedback, again, because there's always little tweaks that you can make. And then maybe your course is going to go on and be officially Quality Matters certified. Or maybe if you want somebody to look at it a little bit before then, it'll be maybe ready at that point to go towards the official QM process. But, the first time you have it reviewed, what you may find is that it's going to go through a revision process. Because remember, it's not about pass or fail. It's about continuous improvement. So the feedback that you get will give you the opportunity, or your instructional designer, the opportunity to make those course revisions. And so there's a bit of a revision process. And again, we're always hoping that a course will eventually be either ready for official QM review or actually QM certified. The loop always closes at the top because a course is certified for 5 years, and then we may want it looked at again. You may want it looked at again. Oftentimes, again, there's new research on what comes out, but also a course that you're making kind of your own modifications to may kind of shift that design a little bit, and you want it looked at again to make sure that those shifts haven't pulled it out of those quality standards. What does Quality Matters mean specifically at NIU? We consider it a guiding standard for course design. So not only can you have your courses reviewed against these standards, but pull out these standards right now as you're designing a course and help it be a guide. People often ask me, what are some steps that I can take to have my course to be at the highest standard right from the beginning? So right from the beginning means use those standards. Yes, you are going to find out what the standards are, I promise. We often get sort of these questions up front, so we try to kind of tackle them, but I promise you I will tell you what they are. The process is voluntary. So right now, no one is required to go through a quality matters review. That may be different in your department. That may be something that your department is heavily encouraging, I would say. All of the courses that are being designed by professional instructional designers here in our center will meet those minimum quality standards because, again, we're experts in our field of instructional design. We know what the standards are. So those courses are going to be built to make those courses quality right from the start. And then there's a growing community of faculty that are committed at NIU. I mentioned sort of even before we got started, I saw some new names on the list, and now you are all part of our community of folks that are interested in the quality of their online courses. Okay, Karen, so here we are going to find out what those standards are. And basically what they are, it's right here, there's 8 general standards. The first one talks about the overall design of the course and how it is clear to the students. The second one talks about your learning objectives, and clearly is used a lot in here. Things in our courses are often clear in our heads, not so clear to our students. So that is a word that I think comes up a lot when we talk about the quality of our online course design. Number 3 talks about our assessments. We want to make sure our assessments are aligned and explained to our students, aligned with our learning objectives and aligned with other components of our courses, including our instructional materials. So we'll talk about the standards that relate to our instructional materials and how they should align with our objectives. Another one of our general standards is that students have opportunities for meaningful interaction within the online course. This is something else that gets really back to those accrediting bodies. They're looking more and more at online courses meeting some level of meaningful interaction. So it's definitely not online courses where the students enter the course at the first week of the course. They don't find out anything about their faculty member or how they're doing in the course until the midterm, and then they don't hear anything else until the end of the course. They're really looking at the quality of the interaction within the course. The technology needs to support the students' learning. There's support available for the students, the online students, that support their success, and that the course is accessible and usable by the students. So there's the standards. Now we're going to find out more about that alignment piece and more about each one of those individual standards. And my timing is actually pretty good because I'm about halfway through, and this is the rest of our time together will be all about unpacking these 8 specific standards. And so I mentioned that the assessments need to align with the learning objectives. And so this is kind of a graphical representation of how this alignment works. And so if we think about our learning objectives, we want to start our course design with our learning objectives. What do we want our students to be able to do upon the completion of their course? And we start with those because everything becomes built off of that. How are we going to know that our students achieved the learning objectives? Well, we're going to know that because of the assessments. That's how we're going to measure their achievement of the learning objectives. So this diagram sort of shows the assessments are that piece that maybe that pinnacle. That's how we're going to know that our students have met the learning objectives. And then how is this all going to be supported? It's going to be supported through our instructional materials, the learning activities that we do in the course, and the course tools that we decide to use to help our students meet those learning objectives. So it all needs to work together. So I am going to send you some resources to learn more about all of these specific review standards, which are sort of sub-standards of those generalized standards. And so this is the way the rubric looks. If you come to the Applying the Quality Matters rubric training, you'll get a complete copy of this rubric, but I will also send you, again, sort of a shortened version of what all of the specific review standards are. So it starts with a brief description of this one. In this example here, it says instructions make clear how to get started and where to find various course components. And there's a point value for each of those. And then there's an annotation that gives you a lot of information about exactly what you might find in a quality course or what you might add in a quality course. But it's not overly prescriptive. It gives you a lot of ideas of how you can sort of meet this particular standard. I kind of pointed at those with my fingers. There are 42 standards, those specific review standards, so those smaller standards within the general standards. The point value is based off of whether they're considered essential, very important, or important. When you add up the points, they will all total up to 100 points, but we're looking for that 85% level. So if you meet all of the essential standards and you get 3 points because you need to meet all of the essential ones, you'll get pretty close to 85% already, but then you just need a combination of the 2 pointers and the 1 pointers in order to get to that 85% overall. So let's really talk about all of those general standards, but I don't want to be the only one talking anymore. I want you to add some things into the text chat area based off of some of these prompts that I've provided for you. When you think about the course overview and the introduction to the course, and that's general standard number 1, instructions make it clear how to get started and where to find various course components. Share with all of us some ideas of how you might do that in your online course. If you haven't done an online course yet, think about how you would do that in your face-to-face course. So just add some ideas in the text chat area. Side pane of the course. Video introduction. Video tutorial. Tell them where the weekly folders can be found. Yeah, great ideas, more video ideas. Yeah, I will say that with the side pane of the course, what I always call the left-hand navigation, one of the great ways to use that side pane and tell students how to get started is actually to create a label that says getting started or start here. That is one way that, again, you're making it really clear how the students can get started. For video introductions, yes, just do a video and kind of walk your students through what they need to do maybe in that first week of the course so that they feel more comfortable and they know where they can find things. Second one, it's a specific review standard. Students are introduced to the purpose and the structure of the course. So can you share a little bit about how that may look in your online course if you were to introduce your students to the purpose and the structure of the course? Calendar of assignments. That calendar definitely shows the structure from what I've read in the research, students want to know what they need to do, when they need to do it by, and what grade they're going to get on it. So that calendar can really help them with that. In the announcements, yes, absolutely. And being really clear about the purpose of this course is, and this is how it addresses the learning outcomes. A diagram, Bill, I like that idea. Maybe you're creating some kind of diagram that outlines how you've structured the course. These are all really good ideas. Sylvia says in weekly folders. Yes, that would be your structure. You're using weekly folders to create your structure. You just want to introduce your student to the fact that everything they need is in the weekly structure. So weekly structure is a weekly folder is a good structure. You just want to make sure your students understand that. Number 2, learning objectives. So now we switch to some of that foundational piece, right? Our learning objectives were at the bottom of that diagram. This really is what the foundation of our entire course design is. We want to start with our learning objectives. So one of the specific review standards say that the course learning objectives describe outcomes that are measurable. So we want to be able to measure our students' achievements of the learning objectives with our assessments. So we need to start with the course learning objectives that are measurable. One of the ways you can do that is to start with action verbs, things that you can observe. I think about measurable being something that's observable. So how can we write our learning objectives if we're able to? Sometimes our learning objectives are given to us by our departments, but if we do have some flexibility, we want students to be able to apply a concept, apply a formula to something. We want students to be able to compare and contrast theories or concepts. If you start writing your learning objectives, first of all, from the student's perspective, but also in what you can measure and observe in your course is really going to help your course design. You want to stay away from learning objectives that are objectives you have in the course, like this course will cover these particular topics. Those are not written from the student's perspective. They're more written from your perspective of what you're going to cover. But you want them to be able to do something when they're done with the course. So you want to, again, think about it from what the students will be able to do at the end of the course. And you also want to be able to stay away from those unobservable, hard to measure learning objectives, like students will be able to understand, or even students will be able to appreciate is another one that can be kind of difficult to measure and observe. So think about, I should say, come back to the workshop where we just talk about learning objectives if you want to learn more about how to write really good learning objectives. The second sort of most important specific review standard and general standard number 2 is that your module learning objectives describe outcomes that are measurable and consistent with the course level objectives. So if your course level objectives are that students will be able to deliver a narrative speech, let's say. Maybe at the module level, you're going to make smaller, discrete learning objectives that students are going to be able to achieve in a smaller period of time. So instead of being able to deliver a narrative speech, students may be able to construct an outline for a narrative speech, because we know that that's going to be foundational to eventually being able to do an entire speech. So your module level objectives need to be, again, just as measurable as those course level objectives, but they also need to connect back to those course level objectives. And again, it gets to that alignment piece. If things aren't aligning, then either the students are trying to get at activities, being assessed on things that don't really align with the course level objectives, or maybe there should be a course level objective because you recognize that that's something that your students need to be able to do. So that's what general standard number 2 talks about. The next one is that your assessments are going to measure those learning objectives. So from the reviewer standpoint, a reviewer would look at the assessments and they wouldn't really look at what you chose as an assessment. Let's say you decided that you were going to do a quiz or a written paper as an assessment. But if you said that a student was going to be able to deliver a narrative speech, you wouldn't want to give them just sort of multiple choice quizzes because it would be very hard to measure their achievement of a learning objective where that kind of alignment was a little bit off. A really good example of an easy to sort of measure specific review standard is this next one, and that's that the course grading policy is clearly stated. Grading policies often are in our syllabus, and so again, a reviewer would look for that grading policy and also look for that the grading policy was easy for the student to know what the grading policy was. So reviewers almost they put on their student perspective a little bit, and they think, okay, does this grading policy make sense to me? And then they would, base that MET standard on again their experience because they're peers. And they would kind of evaluate the course design based off of that. Another one, specific and descriptive criteria are provided for the evaluation of student work and participation and are tied to the course grading policy. How do you think a course designer, a course representative would do that? Karen says rubrics. Yes, that is the perfect answer in my mind, and probably because I just love rubrics. But if you want your students to know your expectations and how you're going to measure them through your assessments, that's what a reviewer is going to be looking for. A reviewer is going to be looking for your rubrics. I like that Diane added clearly defined rubrics. Rubrics with enumerated standards in each cell. Yes, and so the more kind of detail that you can give to them, the reviewer is going to recognize that as quality, and your students are certainly going to benefit from understanding your expectations. Excellent participation in the group today. So instructional materials, that's general standard number 4. The materials contribute to the achievement of the stated learning objectives both at the course and the module unit. So that really shows relevancy, and that gets to the next one, to the purpose of the instructional materials. You want to make sure that the materials that you found that you're incorporating, even the lectures or the presentations that you've added into your course, contribute to that learning objective. It's not just an article that you found that you thought was interesting, but how does that material actually contribute to the students' achievement of that learning objective? And do they know the purpose of it? Students don't want to feel like they need to do this, read this chapter, or watch this presentation and unless they understand the purpose of it and how that's going to help them. For instance, review this presentation because it's going to help you on the next assessment. Again, that shows relevancy to them. When you're designing the course, I think it's a great checkpoint that's showing, oh, why did I assign them this reading? And maybe I don't need to anymore, or wow, I'm completely missing some instructional material that I really need to add into the course that are going to help the students on, that upcoming assessment. So I think this going through this activity in the design process really helps us think about these things a little bit more clearly. So the number 5 is learning activities and learner interaction. And so the first specific review standard states that the learning objectives promote the achievement of the stated learning objectives. Again, that's just your alignment 1. We want to think about all of the activities that we ask our students to do. And there's a little crossover in this one. So if we ask a student to view our presentation, read a journal article, take the quiz, discuss something in the discussion activity, discussion forum, all of those are activities. We just want to make sure that they, again, contribute to the student's achievement of the learning objectives. Sometimes learning activities are more that opportunity for students to interact with us, for students to interact with each other. And so share some ideas in the text chat area about some ways that you would support some interaction in your online course. And you can add those into the text chat area while I move on to course technology, because I think we will get some ideas through the course technology. Peer feedback, excellent way to create some interaction. Group discussion, absolutely. Using groups and then having them discuss. Great ideas. Questions, sure, just pose some questions out there and then see how they interact, how they're starting to critically think about things based off of how they respond to your questions. And so as we talk about general standard number 6, which is our course technology, discussion boards, feedback, maybe peer feedback in a group area, peer feedback in a discussion area, feedback that we give to our students maybe in using a reflection journal is a way that we can connect that, creates that interaction between the instructor and the students. All of that can be facilitated through the course technology that we choose. And so that's one of the specific review standards that say the tools and the media support the course learning objectives, but they also may be supporting that student interaction. If we go all the way back to the beginning and we think about that we want to make sure that the students stay engaged in the course, stay interested in the topics, this engagement is really what's going to help them. So we need to kind of build that into our course design. But the most important thing about course technology is that you're choosing technology that's going to foster the interaction and the learning and not hinder it and not get in the way. So please don't choose technology because you think you have to use it. It should somehow support your students' learning and their achievement in the course environment. Number 7 is learner support. And that couple of those say the course instructions articulate or link to clear descriptions of the technical support area and how they can access it. What I love about learner support is that a lot of it can be accomplished. You can meet these specific review standards by simply adding links into your course where your students can find them. So let them know about the service desks in IT and how they can email them and how they can call them up on the phone. Just by adding a link and maybe some contact information in your course, you're going to be able to meet this learner support standard. Course instructions articulate and link to the institution's accessibility policies and services. This is another really important one, but really easy to do in your course design. So let your students know what NIU's accessibility policy is. That should also be added into your syllabus. And then give them a link to the Disability Resource Center, some contact information to the Disability Resource Center, so that those students are aware of how they can get a hold of those folks. You know, those online students that may actually never come to campus, those online students that aren't our students right now that are being walked around to these different support units across campus. You know, add them into your online course, and again, the research shows this makes a lot of difference to your online students. Finally, accessibility and usability, that's general standard number 8. And the first one is that the course navigation facilitates the ease of use. Your course design, Sylvia talked about earlier, putting things into weekly folders. If things are organized and it's really clear how the students navigate through your content, they're going to be able to kind of take their mind space and be able to concentrate on your content rather than struggling with where do I find this and I can't, I'm already lost, and how do I find the quiz, and where was that reading she talked about in the announcement. The navigation is really what's going to set your students up for success, because they can concentrate on the content, not so much on the navigation. The course also needs to employ any accessible technologies and to provide them with guidance on how to obtain an accommodation. So your students can reach out to the Disability Resource Center if they need an accommodation in some way. The Disability Resource Center will get back to you and let you know what those accommodations are. You can use the course technology to help with any of those accommodations, but we are a state university. We accept federal funds, so we are also by law required to make sure that our content and our courses are accessible in some very real ways, like closed captioning on our videos, image descriptions on images, PDFs instead of Word documents so they're screen readable. We need to kind of make all of these considerations. And so again, as a reviewer, the reviewer is going to be looking at your content and making sure it meets these accessibility standards. I did say that there was a lot packed into this 1 hour, and we're down to the last 2 minutes of it. A reminder of what those standards are, but if you want more information on any of this, again, we do have a quality series, usually once or twice a month. We do a workshop that just takes all of those 8 standards and just blows them out, gives you a lot more ideas about how you can actually meet any of these standards, really practical ideas. So, you know, this is how you can meet the standard, and this is how you can incorporate this into your Blackboard course. So we really, we kind of back away from the theory at that point, and we just try to get really practical. On the 21st of September, we have that all-day Applying the Quality Matters rubric training. You can register it by going to go.nau.edu, APPQMR. And if you're interested in learning more about Quality Matters, you can go to www.qmprogram.org and again learn more about Quality Matters. If you need to reach out to me, if you have any questions now, then the best way actually to get hold of me is my email. That way, you know, regardless of whether I'm in the office or on a workshop, I will get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you everyone for joining me.